Commander Taman stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the distant planet through the view screen. New Sol looked peaceful from space. The blue and green world spun slowly, completely unaware of what was coming. 50,000 humans lived down there, mining precious metals and building their small colony. The Velcran commander smiled, showing his sharp teeth. His reptilian face was covered in dark scales, and his yellow eyes gleamed with cruel intelligence. He had destroyed 7 human colonies in the past year. This one would be the 8th, but this time would be different. This time, he had a special plan. Taman walked across the bridge to where his communication officer sat at her station. Sula was one of his best technicians, skilled at intercepting and copying alien signals. For weeks, she had been studying human communication patterns. "Show me what you have," Taman ordered. Sula activated her computer screen. "We captured many human radio transmissions during our last attack on Mining Station Beta 7. I have recorded their voices, their speech patterns, even their emergency codes." On the screen, waves of data flowed past. Voice samples, communication protocols, and most importantly, the exact format humans used for distress calls. Taman had learned that humans always responded to cries for help. It was their weakness, and he planned to use it against them. "Can you make it sound real?" he asked. "Yes, Commander. I can copy the voice of Captain Huna, the Defense Force leader on New Sol. The humans will believe she is calling for help." Taman nodded with satisfaction. His plan was simple but effective. Send a fake distress call that would bring human rescue ships into his trap. When they arrived, his fleet would destroy them completely. Then, with no witnesses left alive, he would attack the colony itself. The Velcran Empire had been at war with humans for 5 years now. The scaly reptiles controlled over 200 worlds while the humans were still newcomers to this part of space. Most alien races feared the Velcrans and their powerful fleets. But humans were different. They fought back, and they never gave up trying to save their people. That was exactly what Taman planned to use against them. "Prepare the message," he commanded. Sula began working on her computer. She combined voice samples from Captain Huna with background sounds from the colony. The fake message would sound like it came from the planet's surface, with atmospheric noise and the hum of mining equipment in the background. "This is Captain Hyuna of New Sol Defense Force," the artificial voice said through the speakers. "We are under attack by Velcran forces. Colony defense has failed. We need immediate evacuation assistance. Repeat, this is an emergency. 50,000 civilians need rescue. Please respond immediately." Taman listened carefully. The voice sounded perfect. Even he could not tell it was fake. The fear in the artificial voice seemed real, and the background sounds matched what human colonies usually sounded like. "Excellent work," he told Sula. "Now position our fleet in the asteroid belt. Use the rocks to hide our ships." The Velcran fleet moved into the thick asteroid field that surrounded the New Sol system. 45 warships took positions behind large space rocks, their engines powered down and weapons ready. Advanced cloaking devices made them invisible to most sensors. Taman had studied human response patterns. When they received a distress call, they usually sent a small rescue force first. Maybe 1 or 2 ships, carrying evacuation pods and medical supplies. These ships would be lightly armed, built for rescue work rather than fighting. His fleet could destroy such a force in minutes. After that, larger human warships might come looking for their missing rescue vessels. Taman would destroy those. 2, one group at a time until no humans remained who knew about New Sol's location. The plan had another advantage. By using a fake distress call, Taman would make the humans doubt all future emergency signals. If they could not trust their own distress calls, they would hesitate to respond quickly to real emergencies. This would make future attacks much easier. "Broadcasting the message now," Sula reported. The fake distress call went out on standard human emergency frequencies. It would reach Earth in about 6 hours, traveling through space at faster than light speeds. The response would take another 6 hours to arrive. While they waited, Taman reviewed his battle plans with his ship captains. Each Velcran vessel had specific targets and attack vectors. They would emerge from hiding simultaneously, surrounding any human ships that responded to the fake call. The waiting was the hardest part. Velcran warriors were bred for battle, not patience. But Taman kept his crews busy with weapon drills and system checks. Everything had to be perfect when the humans arrived. Hours passed slowly. The planet continued its peaceful rotation below them, completely unaware that its fate hung in the balance. The human colonists were probably working in their mines, teaching their children in schools and living their normal lives. Soon, that would all be over. "Sir," Sula called from her station, "I'm detecting hyperspace disturbances at the edge of the system." Taman felt his pulse quicken. "How many ships?" "Difficult to tell from this distance. The signals are strange." "What do you mean, strange?" Sula frowned at her instruments. "The energy readings are much larger than expected for rescue ships, and there are many more hyperspace signatures than usual." A cold feeling began to grow in Taman's stomach. Something was wrong. Human rescue operations were supposed to be small and quick, not large fleet movements. "Sir," another officer called out, "long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures. These are not rescue ships. These are warships. Big ones." Taman stared at the tactical display as dozens of red dots appeared around the system's edge. Each dot represented a human vessel, and they kept appearing. 10 ships became 20. 20 became 50. The numbers kept climbing. "This is impossible," he whispered. "It's just a distress call. Why would they send so many ships?" But deep in his mind, a terrible thought was beginning to form. What if humans took distress calls more seriously than he had realized? What if faking an emergency signal was not just a military trick to them, but something much worse? The trap was supposed to catch a few rescue ships. Instead, it looked like he had just challenged the entire human fleet to battle. And they were coming. Admiral Doyun was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency signal arrived at Earth Command. The distress call from New Sol came through the speakers in his quarters aboard the UES Incheon, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. "This is Captain Huna of New Sol Defense Force," the voice said. "We are under attack by Velcran forces. Colony defense has failed. We need immediate evacuation assistance." Do-hyun set down his coffee cup and listened to the complete message. Something felt wrong about it. After 30 years in the Space Navy, he had heard many real distress calls. This one sounded different somehow. He walked quickly to the bridge of his ship. The Incheon was massive, over 2 kilometers long and armed with the latest human weapons technology. It served as the flagship of the 7th Fleet, one of Earth's most powerful space forces. "Captain Bora, report to the bridge immediately," he called over the ship's communication system. Bora arrived within minutes. She was Earth's best intelligence analyst, a woman who could spot lies and deception better than any computer. Her specialty was studying alien communication patterns and finding hidden meanings. "Play the message again," Doyun ordered. They listened to the distress call 3 times. Bora frowned and pulled up voice analysis data on her tablet computer. "Sir, there are problems with this signal," she said. The voice patterns match Captain Huna's recorded speech, but the stress markers are wrong. When people are really scared, their voices change in specific ways. This sounds more like someone reading a script. Do-hyun nodded. He had suspected the same thing. "What else?" "The background noise doesn't match New Sol's atmospheric conditions. I've been to that colony twice. The mining equipment there makes a different sound than what we're hearing in this message. So it's fake? Probably. But sir, there are still 50,000 humans living on that planet. Even if this specific message is a lie, those people might really be in danger." Do-hyun thought carefully. If the distress call was fake, it meant enemies were trying to lure human ships into a trap. But if it was real, 50,000 innocent people would die while Earth's forces hesitated. There was only one proper response to this situation. "Get me Earth Command," he ordered. The communication link to Earth took several minutes to establish across the vast distance. When Fleet Admiral Minjae appeared on the main screen, her expression was serious. Admiral Do-hyun, we've received your analysis of the New Seoul situation. What are your recommendations? Ma'am, I believe this is a trap designed to destroy our rescue forces. But we cannot ignore the possibility that real humans are in danger. Agreed. That's why we're authorizing Operation Righteous Fury. Do-hyun felt surprise run through him. Operation Righteous Fury was a massive military response plan designed for major threats to human civilization. It had never been used before. Ma'am, are you sure? That's a lot of firepower for one colony. Admiral Min-jae's expression grew cold. Admiral, someone just used a fake human distress call to try to murder our rescue workers. In our culture, emergency calls for help are sacred. You do not lie about people needing rescue. Ever. Now Do-hyun understood. This wasn't just about saving New Seoul. This was about teaching the galaxy that humans took distress calls seriously. Anyone who faked an emergency signal would face terrible consequences. How many fleets, ma'am? 3. The 7th Fleet under your command. The 12th Fleet under Admiral Yoon-ji and the 3rd Fleet commanded by Admiral Si-woo. Do-hyun felt his breath catch. Admiral Si-woo was a legend in the Space Navy. Other officers called him the Reaper of Proxima because of what he had done to alien pirates in that star system. If Earth was sending Si-woo, they were not planning to show mercy. Our orders, ma'am. Respond to the distress call. Rescue any humans who need help. Destroy any hostile forces you encounter. Make sure the galaxy understands that you do not fake human emergency signals. The communication link ended. Do-hyun turned to his bridge crew who had heard the entire conversation. Their faces showed the same grim determination he felt. Send orders to all ships in the 7th Fleet, he commanded. We jump to hyperspace in 2 hours. Full battle readiness. Combat load on all weapons. Captain Bora approached him. Sir, if this is really a trap, we might be flying into a major battle. I know. Send a message to all fleet captains. Explain the situation. Tell them that someone used our own voices against us. Used our desire to help people as a weapon. Word spread quickly through the fleet. Aboard 300 human warships, 2 million men and women prepared for battle. They loaded weapons, checked shields, and ran final system tests. But more than that, they felt anger building in their hearts. Captain Ji-won commanded the destroyer Seoul's Pride. She called her crew together in the ship's main assembly room. 200 people crowded in to hear her speak. Everyone has heard about the fake distress call, she said. Our enemies think they're clever. They recorded our voices, copied our emergency signals, and planned to murder anyone who came to help. Angry murmurs ran through the crowd. They made one big mistake, Ji-won continued. They don't understand what distress calls mean to us. When someone calls for help, we come. Always. No matter how dangerous it is. That's not just military policy. That's who we are as humans. The murmurs grew louder, more determined. Today we're going to teach our enemies what happens when you fake a call for help. We're going to show them that there are consequences for using human voices to lie about people in danger. Similar scenes played out on ships throughout the 3 fleets. Human crews prepared for battle, but this was different from normal military operations. This felt personal. Someone had tried to corrupt the most basic human instinct, the need to help others in trouble. Admiral Si-woo's flagship, the massive dreadnought Vengeance, led the 3rd Fleet toward the combat zone. His crew had fought in more battles than any other unit in the Space Navy. They specialized in fighting against overwhelming odds and winning. The 3 fleets converged on the New Seoul system from different directions. Their approach was coordinated but looked random to enemy sensors. Anyone waiting in ambush would not know where the human ships would appear. As the fleets prepared to exit hyperspace, Admiral Do-hyun sent one final message to all ships. Remember, we came here to save lives, but we also came to deliver justice. Show our enemies what happens when they abuse human trust. The trap was supposed to catch a few rescue ships. Instead, it was about to catch the attention of 300 human warships crewed by very angry people who had just learned that someone dared to fake a human distress call. Space around New Sol exploded into light as the first human ships dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Taman watched his sensors in growing horror as more and more vessels appeared on his screens. What was supposed to be a simple ambush had turned into the largest space battle he had ever seen. The Velcran commander had hidden 45 ships in the asteroid belt. Now he faced over 300 human warships appearing in groups all around the system. Massive dreadnoughts materialized alongside sleek cruisers and fast destroyers. The humans had brought enough firepower to conquer an entire star system. "All ships attack now," Taman shouted into his communications system. "Before they can organize." The Velcran fleet burst from their hiding spots among the asteroids. Their ships were built for war, with thick armor and powerful energy weapons. But as they moved to attack, they quickly realized they were outnumbered 7-1. Captain Nari commanded the destroyer Gangnam, one of the first human ships to engage the enemy. Her vessel was smaller than the Velcran cruisers, but it carried experimental rail cannon weapons that could punch through almost any armor. "Target the lead enemy cruiser," she ordered her weapons officer. "Full power to forward guns." The Gangnam's rail cannons fired streams of metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The kinetic energy was enormous, like being hit by meteors traveling at nearly light speed. The Velcran cruiser's shields flared and collapsed, and the metal slugs tore through, its hull like paper. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "Enemy vessel is breaking apart." But the Velcrans were experienced fighters. Even caught by surprise, they responded quickly and aggressively. Commander Valix, piloting a heavy battleship, managed to get behind a human frigate and opened fire with all weapons. The human ship's shields held for a few seconds, then failed under the massive energy bombardment. The frigate exploded in a ball of flame, taking 200 human crew members with it. The death of their comrades only made the other human ships fight harder. Commander Jiwon led a squadron of fighter craft launched from the carrier New Tokyo. Her small ships were fast and deadly, swarming around the larger Velcran vessels like angry insects. "Listen up, all Velcran ships," she broadcast on their communication frequencies. "You made one big mistake today. You used our voices to call for help, then planned to murder everyone who came. Now you're going to learn what happens when humans get truly angry." Her fighters dove toward a Velcran destroyer, dodging its defensive fire. Each fighter carried quantum torpedoes, weapons that could create small black holes on impact. When they hit, they didn't just damage enemy ships, they consumed them. The destroyer tried to turn away, but it was too big and slow. 12 quantum torpedoes struck its hull simultaneously. The ship seemed to fold in on itself as miniature black holes tore it apart at the atomic level. All across the battlefield, human ships demonstrated technologies the Velcrans had never encountered. Adaptive shielding that grew stronger under enemy fire, artificial intelligence computers that could predict enemy movements and adjust tactics in real time, plasma cannons that burned at the temperature of stars. But the humans weren't just technologically superior. They were fighting with an anger that scared their enemies. Admiral Do-hyun watched the battle from the bridge of the Incheon. His flagship was the largest ship in the system, bristling with enough weapons to level a planet. But he held back from the main fighting, using his ship as a command center to coordinate the attack. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from several Velcran ships." "Denied," Do-hyun said coldly. "They faked a distress call. There is no mercy for that crime." The fighting continued for 6 hours. Despite being outnumbered, the Velcrans were tough opponents who refused to give up easily. Their ships had thick armor and powerful shields. Their crews fought desperately, knowing that defeat meant death. Captain Sunho commanded the heavy cruiser, Pusan. His ship exchanged fire with a Velcran battleship for over an hour, both vessels hammering each other with everything they had. The human cruiser's hull was scorched and dented, but its advanced repair systems kept fixing damage as fast as the enemy could cause it. "All weapons, concentrate fire on their engine section," Sunho ordered. "Let's see how they fight when they can't maneuver." The Pusan's main guns fired continuously, sending streams of coherent energy toward the enemy battleship. The Velcran vessel's aft shields finally failed, and the energy beams sliced through its engine compartments. Explosions rippled along its hull as the ship lost power and began to drift helplessly. But the Velkrans had their victories too. Commander Krathos, leading a group of fast attack ships, managed to coordinate an assault on the human destroyer Sejong. They attacked from multiple directions, overwhelming its defenses with sheer numbers. The Sejong fought bravely, its crew refusing to abandon ship even when their hull was breached in dozens of places. They kept firing their weapons until the very end, when a Velkran torpedo finally reached their reactor core. The explosion was visible from halfway across the solar system. 400 human crew members died in that blast, but they took 2 Velkran ships with them. As the battle wore on, the superior numbers and technology of the human fleet began to tell. One by one, Velkran ships were destroyed or crippled. Their formations broke apart under the relentless human assault. Commander Taman realized his fleet was doomed. Half his ships were already destroyed, and the rest were heavily damaged. The humans kept coming, seemingly endless waves of warships that attacked with mechanical precision and cold fury. All remaining ships, retreat to hyperspace, he ordered. We cannot win this battle. The surviving Velkran vessels began fleeing toward the edge of the star system, hoping to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jumps. But the humans were ready for this too. Admiral Siwoo's Third Fleet had positioned itself along the most likely escape routes. As the Velkran ships tried to run, they found their path blocked by fresh human warships that had not yet joined the fighting. "This is Admiral Siwoo to all Velkran vessels," came the broadcast. "You will surrender immediately or you will be destroyed. There is no third option." The voice was calm and cold, completely without emotion. Siwoo was known throughout human space as a commander who never showed mercy to enemies who threatened civilians. Several Velkran ships tried to fight their way past the Third Fleet. They died quickly, torn apart by weapons that seemed almost magical in their power and precision. Commander Taman's ship was among the few that managed to reach hyperspace and escape. As his battered vessel fled toward Velkran space, he looked back at the battle zone through his ship's rear cameras. The space around New Sol was filled with the wreckage of his fleet. 45 ships had entered the battle. Only 7 had survived to retreat. The humans had destroyed an entire Velkran battle group in a single afternoon. But more than that, they had sent a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. The message was simple and terrifying. Never fake a human distress call. As the surviving human ships moved toward the planet to begin rescue operations, word of the battle was already traveling to every corner of known space. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone tried to use humanity's greatest strength against them. The battle for New Sol was over, but Admiral Do-hyun knew the war was just beginning. His fleet had destroyed most of the Velkran ambush force, but several enemy ships had escaped. Those survivors would report back to their empire about humanity's massive response to the fake distress call. Standing on the bridge of the Incheon, Do-hyun watched as rescue ships descended toward New Sol's surface. The planet had indeed been under attack when the human fleets arrived. Velkran ground forces had captured several mining facilities and were preparing to enslave the human colonists. "Sir," Captain Bora reported, "our Marines have secured all major population centers on the planet. The Velkran ground troops surrendered after their fleet was destroyed. We're evacuating wounded civilians now." That was good news, but Do-hyun's mind was focused on larger concerns. Intelligence reports showed that the Velkran Empire had military bases throughout this entire sector of space. They had been systematically attacking human colonies for months, using deception and surprise tactics to isolate and destroy them. The fake distress call was just their latest trick, but it was also their biggest mistake. Captain Minho approached the Admiral's command station. He was the commander of the stealth frigate Shadow of Sol, one of the most advanced reconnaissance ships in the human fleet. His vessel could move through space almost invisibly, gathering intelligence deep in enemy territory. "Admiral, I've completed scouting missions to 12 nearby star systems," Minho reported. "The Velkrans have major military installations in 7 of them. They're building up for a large-scale invasion of human space." Do-hyun studied the tactical maps on his display screen. Red markers showed confirmed Velkran bases, while yellow markers indicated possible locations. The enemy had been busy, preparing for a war they thought they could win through trickery and surprise attacks. "What's the status of our own forces?" he asked. "All 3 fleets are ready for extended operations. Admiral Yunji's 12th Fleet has completed repairs and resupply. Admiral Siwoo's 3rd Fleet is requesting permission to begin immediate attacks on enemy positions." That was typical of Siwoo. The man was known throughout the Space Navy for his aggressive tactics and his hatred of enemies who targeted civilians. He had probably started planning attacks on Velcran bases before the battle for New Sol was even finished. A communication alert sounded, and the main screen showed an incoming message from Earth Command. Fleet Admiral Minjae appeared, her expression serious as always. "Admiral Do-Yun, congratulations on your victory at New Sol. What's the current situation?" "Thank you, ma'am. We've secured the planet and rescued all human civilians. But our intelligence shows this was part of a much larger Velcron operation. They have bases throughout this sector, and they're preparing for major attacks on our colonies." "I see. What do you recommend?" Do-Hyun had been thinking about this question. Since the battle ended, military doctrine suggested consolidating their position and waiting for reinforcements. But this situation was different. The Velcrons had crossed a line that could not be forgiven. "Ma'am, they didn't just attack us. They perverted our most basic principle. They made us doubt the very calls for help that define who we are as humans. If we let this pass, other enemies will try the same trick." Admiral Minji nodded slowly. "Agreed. We cannot allow the sanctity of distress calls to be compromised. What operation do you propose?" "Operation Cleansing Thunder. We systematically dismantle every Velcran military installation within 200 light years. Not for conquest, but to send a message that will echo across the galaxy." "That's a massive undertaking. You're talking about attacking dozens of enemy bases." "Yes, ma'am. But we have the forces to do it, and more importantly, we have the moral authority. They faked a human distress call. The galaxy needs to understand what that means." The conversation continued for several minutes as they discussed logistics and strategy. When it ended, Admiral Do-Hyun had authorization for the largest human military operation since the colonial wars 50 years earlier. He called a meeting of all fleet commanders aboard the Incheon. Admirals Yunji and Siwoo arrived within hours, along with dozens of ship captains and senior officers. The ship's main conference room was packed with humanity's finest military leaders. "The Velcrons think they're clever," Do-Hyun began. "They've been picking off our colonies one by one, using deception and false flags to isolate their targets. They made us doubt our own rescue signals." Murmurs of anger ran through the room. Every person present had sworn an oath to protect human civilians and respond to emergency calls. "We're going to show them the consequences of their actions," Do-Hyun continued. "Operation Cleansing Thunder will eliminate every Velcran military base within 200 light years of Earth. We're not conquering their territory. We're not enslaving their people. We're teaching them a lesson they'll never forget." "Admiral," Siwoo leaned forward, his scarred face grim. "What about civilian casualties? We avoid them whenever possible. Military targets only. Our goal is to cripple their ability to make war, not to commit genocide." The first target was Velcron Outpost Gamma 7, a military shipyard that built the long-range cruisers used to attack human colonies. Captain Sunho led the assault with a battle group of 30 ships. The attack was swift and merciless. Human vessels emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their targeting computers already locked onto critical systems. The outpost's defenses were designed to repel conventional attacks, but they proved useless against humanity's coordinated fury. Sunho's flagship, the heavy cruiser Pusan, led the charge. Its main guns fired continuously, sending streams of coherent energy toward the enemy shipyard. Explosions rippled across the facility as fuel depots and ammunition storage areas went up in flames. "Target the construction bays," Sunho ordered. "Make sure they can't build any more warships here." The battle lasted only 2 hours. When it was over, Outpost Gamma 7 was a burning ruin floating in space. The Velcran garrison had been evacuated to nearby planets, but their military capability was completely destroyed. Similar attacks followed across the sector. Captain Yuna led an assault on a Velcran intelligence center, destroying their communications arrays and computer systems. Commander Jeho's destroyer squadron eliminated a forward supply base that had been supporting attacks on human shipping. Each victory was swift and decisive. The human fleets used overwhelming force and superior technology to crush their enemies before they could mount effective resistance. But they were careful to minimize civilian casualties, following their own moral code even in the midst of war. The Velcran Empire was stunned by the scale and speed of the human response. In just 2 weeks, they lost more military assets than in the previous year of fighting. Their expansion plans were in ruins and their forces were retreating on all fronts. But more importantly, word was spreading throughout the galaxy about what had happened. Other alien races began to understand that humans took distress calls very seriously indeed. The price for faking an emergency signal was total military destruction. As the human fleets continued their systematic campaign, one message became clear. To every species in known space, when humans hear a call for help, they come, and heaven help anyone who tries to abuse that trust. 3 months after the fake distress call that started everything, a massive Velcran diplomatic ship approached the human fleet. The vessel was painted white and bore the universal symbols of peaceful contact. Emperor Vrathos himself was aboard, coming to negotiate an end to the war his commanders had started. Admiral Do Hyun received the request for a meeting with mixed feelings. The human fleets had destroyed 47 Velcran military bases, crippled their expansion efforts, and rescued thousands of enslaved civilians from a dozen different species. The message had been sent clearly across the galaxy. Never fake a human distress call. But the killing had to stop sometime. The meeting took place aboard the Incheon, in the main conference room where human officers had planned their devastating campaign. Emperor Vrathos was an impressive figure, over 3 meters tall with deep blue scales and intelligent golden eyes. He wore ceremonial armor that marked him as the supreme ruler of over 200 worlds. With him came his military advisors and diplomatic staff. They looked nervous as they entered the room, clearly aware that they were aboard the flagship of the fleet that had crushed their empire's expansion plans. Captain Yuna served as the fleet's diplomatic officer. She was a skilled negotiator who had helped end several smaller conflicts through peaceful means. But as she looked at the Velcran delegation, her expression was cold and professional. "Your Majesty," she said formally, "we are prepared to hear your proposals for ending hostilities." Emperor Vrathos settled his large frame into a specially built chair. His golden eyes studied the human officers around the table, trying to understand these strange aliens who had responded to a simple military deception with such overwhelming force. "Admiral Do Hyun," he said in heavily accented but clear human language, "my empire seeks peace with your people. We are prepared to discuss territorial boundaries, trade agreements, and reparations for damages caused during our recent conflicts." Do Hyun leaned back in his chair, his face showing no emotion. The emperor was trying to treat this like a normal, post-war negotiation, discussing borders and resources as if this had been a conventional territorial dispute. "Your Majesty, I don't think you understand the situation. We're not interested in your territory or your resources. We want something far more valuable than that." The emperor looked confused. What could be more valuable than territory and trade? Rights? Captain Yuna pulled up a holographic display showing communication frequencies and emergency protocols. "We want your word, Your Majesty. Your personal guarantee that the Velcran Empire will never again fake a distress call from any species. Furthermore," she continued, "you will establish new protocols to verify and respond to genuine emergency signals throughout your territory, and you will spread the word to every species in this galaxy that distress calls are sacred to humans." "Emperor," Vrathos stared at the human officers in disbelief. "You destroyed half of our military for communication protocols?" Admiral Siwu spoke for the first time since entering the room. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Your species tried to turn our greatest strength into our greatest weakness. You made us doubt every cry for help that reaches our ears. You nearly corrupted the most basic principle of human civilization." The Emperor's advisors whispered urgently among themselves. They had expected negotiations about planets and resources, not demands about emergency communications. This was unlike any post-war discussion in their long experience. These terms are unusual, Vrathos said carefully. In our culture, warfare has always involved deception. Fake signals, false intelligence, misleading communications. These are standard military tactics. Admiral Do-hyun leaned forward, his eyes cold as space itself. Not anymore. Not in this galaxy. Not when it involves human distress calls. But surely you understand that in war, all tactics are acceptable if they lead to victory? No, Do-hyun said simply. They are not. The silence in the room was heavy with tension. The Velcron Emperor was beginning to understand that he was dealing with a species unlike any other he had encountered. These humans had principles they would not compromise, lines they would not allow anyone to cross. Admiral Siwoo stood up, his scarred face showing the results of years of combat against pirates and slavers. Let me explain something to you, Your Majesty. When humans hear a distress call, we come. Always. Without question, without hesitation. It doesn't matter if the call comes from friends or enemies, from our own species, or from aliens we've never met. He walked to the window overlooking the busy hangar bays of the Incheon. Do you see those rescue ships being loaded with medical supplies? They're preparing for another emergency call that came in this morning. A Centaurian research station lost life support in a solar storm. The Emperor looked through the window at the human crews working frantically to prepare their ships for launch. Those people don't know if this call is real or fake, Siwoo continued. Your little trick made them doubt. For the first time in human history, our rescue crews hesitated before responding to an emergency signal. That hesitation could have cost lives. And that, Admiral Do-hyun said, is why there can be no negotiation here. You will agree to our terms completely, or we will continue dismantling your military until you have no choice. The Emperor sat in silence for several minutes considering his options. His empire's military had been crippled by the human response. Continuing the war would only lead to more destruction and eventual defeat. Finally, he spoke. Very well. The Velcron Empire agrees to your terms. We will establish the communication protocols you require, and we will inform all species in this sector about the significance of human distress calls. Good, Captain Yuna said, but understand that we will be monitoring your compliance. Any violation of these agreements will result in immediate military action. The formal treaty was signed within hours, but the real impact of the agreement would be felt throughout the galaxy for years to come. Word spread quickly among the thousands of alien species that shared this region of space. The story of what happened when someone faked a human distress call became legendary. Trade ships carried the tale from system to system. Diplomatic communications included warnings about respecting human emergency signals. Captain Jeho, now commanding relief operations throughout the sector, found the change remarkable. His ships received genuine calls for help from dozens of different species. Alien crews who had been suspicious of human motives began to trust that rescue ships would actually come when called. The colony of New Seoul, where the crisis had begun, became a symbol of human determination. The mining operation was expanded, and the population grew to over 100,000 people. Children who had survived the Velcron occupation learned in school about the day the entire human fleet came to save them. More importantly, the galaxy had learned a fundamental truth about humanity. When humans hear a distress call, they respond. Every time. Without question. And they will destroy anyone who tries to corrupt that trust. Standing on the observation deck of his flagship, Admiral Do-hyun watched as rescue ships departed for another emergency call. This time it was real. A cargo vessel with engine failure drifting in the void between stars. The human crews had no doubts about responding immediately. That was exactly how it should be. In the distance, alien observation ships from a dozen different species watched the human rescue operation with respectful attention. They were learning what it meant to live in a galaxy where someone would always come when you called for help. The fake distress call had been meant to destroy human rescue capabilities. Instead, it had taught the entire galaxy to respect and protect the sacred nature of emergency signals. and that made the galaxy a safer place for everyone.